Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Jasmine Garner. I am the host of this podcast, The Modest Movement, Christian Body Image. I am the founder. I am just want to say that I'm sorry that I took a break from posting videos. I was still posting my reels, but I had not posted a real YouTube video since like July, and I have not posted on my podcast since February 2024. I feel really bad about that. But welcome back. I'm Jasmine. I am the founder of the Modest Movement and Christian Body Image. This channel is where both of my ministries collide, where I talk about the theology of modesty and God's heart for it. And we also give practical tips and strategies for overcoming body image and self-esteem issues with biblical teaching. And so I'm so excited to be back here. Welcome into the new year, guys. This is our first video of 2025. Bear with me, okay? I do not have all those cool systems that everybody else be having, okay? They got the cool side by side. Let me know what system people are using to do that. I wasn't going to pay for it today, but I'm willing to pay for it for next month and beyond. All right, you feel me? So if you could guys let me know what systems are people using like that, because help your girl out so that I don't have to keep screen recording like this. But nevertheless, I am excited to be here. And if you guys, have you been through any of my courses, you know I don't wait for perfect conditions to get things done. I will start a thing with what I have. And then as I get upgraded, as God upgrades your girl, I will use better systems. So I'm ready for a better system. Let me know what you guys know about these cool side-by-side features and stuff. So my first video is 2025. I've been sitting on this topic about, is plastic surgery a sin? People ask this question on Google all the time. And I feel like, why not address it? I feel like I have enough experience in this area for me to answer this biblically. And I watched this interview a while ago when Lecrae put this out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lecrae and his podcast, The Deep End. And I watched this one and I said, you know what, this would be a great addition to me addressing, is plastic surgery a sin? And we're going to listen to the story of Nona Jones. I'm not going to sit through the whole thing. I have some bits and pieces that I want to point out because I know the women that I've coached have dealt with similar things, or they may be feeling similar things. And so her story comes from that she was a believer who got a BBL. And she basically, her story is that she had a lot of childhood trauma from being rejected by her mom and sexually abused by her mom's boyfriend. And so that is kind of like her foundation in her childhood, which led her down these various different paths. And so we're just going to look at who is Nona Jones, first of all, and then I'm going to pick out the pieces that stood out to me with what she said. And we're going to talk about the biblical teaching of, is plastic surgery a sin? It's going to be brief. It's not really long, really. It's not. So just bear with me. Let's get started. Let's see who is Nona Jones. I actually don't really know who she is until I watched this 4 months ago. So you guys may know about her. I don't really know that much about her, but her story was very captivating.
On the interwebs, being extremely transparent about some story that you've told. You're friends with so many different prominent figures in the mainstream and in Christianity. I'm just like, but who is Nona? Like, where you from? Who your mama and them is? Who your parents is? You know what I mean? Like, where? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where you come from.
Sure. So it's funny because when people ask me to tell them about myself, like, I don't ever think of anything I've done. I don't think of my resume, who I know. The words I use to describe myself are, I'm a statistically improbable product of God's grace.
Okay.
Truly.
Okay.
And to explain, so I was born to a mom who didn't want to have children. She and my dad had been married for about 13 years when she found out she was pregnant with me. And I think it was about halfway through the pregnancy, my dad started to have some stomach pain. So he went to the doctor to get it diagnosed. And they diagnosed him with terminal stomach cancer. And he was 34 at the time. He lived until about 2 months shy of my second birthday when he passed away. And my mom, she didn't want to have kids, so she was angry. She was just angry at the whole situation, that she was pregnant. She was angry that he was dying. And so after he died, she met a guy that she fell in love with, and he promised that he would take care of her and me, but he had to move us across the country, basically. So I was born up north. He moved us down to Florida, and that relationship fell apart shortly after we got there. And so I remember from a young age, just like this string of men coming in and out of her life and my life. And she finally met a guy who became her live-in boyfriend. And from the very beginning, I was about maybe 5. I didn't like him. I just didn't like him. Like, there was something about him that scared me. And I told her, and she was like, give him a chance. He's a good guy. He'll grow on you. So he moves in.
Kids, and I don't mean to make any light of this at all, but kids be knowing. Like, some kids, we're so innocent in our sensitivity. We be knowing. Like, she felt obviously like this unsafe presence about this man.
Then, and I think it was about me 6-8 months into him moving in, her sister passed away. And so she had to go back up north to the funeral. And I begged her, like, I remember standing on the side of the bed. I begged her to take me with her to this funeral because I didn't want to stay with him. Like, that was the big thing. But she couldn't afford another plane ticket. And so she left me with him. And the very first night that she was gone, he assaulted me. And I was, again, about 5 years old. And I remember him saying after it was over, you better not tell your mom because she'll get rid of you. She doesn't want you. And I didn't say anything because, again, I heard what he said. I believed what he said. And so when she came back, I was just a different kid. Like, before that, I was super outgoing. I'm an only child, so I would be like super outgoing, talking all the time. I became very quiet, very reserved. When I started elementary school, my teachers...
Oh my goodness, this is bringing up so much, just in the Black community in general, or even in any family where there's a lot of like sexual abuse going on. The spirit of silence comes over you. Because for one, they tell you not to say anything because, this is a big deal. It's a big sin. And she basically became a total different person after that. That is so heartbreaking. And even in my family, like, we've been through these types of things and there's just silence. You don't even know about it till somebody's dying or till somebody actually wants to say something. You know what I mean? So it's really sad. So I just want to tell you guys her backstory. This is her interview. And I know, people do these types of things all the time where they giving commentary about folks. I want to know, what is her story? How did she end up in this place of getting plastic surgery, getting a BBL? You guys can go to Lecrae's channel to watch his podcast and pull this up and hear all of it. But I just want to pick out a few pieces that she talked about. So this is her foundation, is that she comes from a very traumatic childhood of not being wanted by her mom, her father passing away. So she already has this spirit of rejection operating inside of her as a foundation. And so she skipped around to during that time when she was going through all of this. She, when you're an unbeliever, you find ways to cope with this rejection. You find ways to cope with your trauma. And so what she did, and let's skip up to 17. This is where a lot of people have their food comes in, because a lot of women, especially when I'm coaching women or being in this coaching industry with body image, you deal with bulimia, you deal with anorexia. And if there's a reason why these women start doing these things to their own bodies, it's like they have a self-hatred for themselves because they were nurtured in rejection. And so they do things to try to cope or to try to fix their problem. And so this is something that she said she did in around this period.
Is to kind of numb the pain of what I was feeling and experiencing.
You said food was like numbing her pain.
I would just eat. I would just eat, and I would eat, and I would eat, and I would eat. Because when I was eating, it was like I could actually experience some joy, right? I could experience
the dopamine of
that's exactly
food.
what it was. It was the dopamine of the food. And so I was always overweight, and I was the overweight kid in elementary school, got called Miss Piggy, etc. Middle school.
Wow. So you see how these different things in your life, if you are someone who's experiencing issues around food and body image, this could trace all the way back to your childhood of rejection, bullying, whatever it may be. Everybody has some type of foundation, some type of upbringing where your disposition is being nurtured to either reject yourself or not like yourself, or, especially coming from a sexually abusive past, you deal with rejection and silence, and you're in inner torment because you can't say anything, nobody really knows about it, and so it's this inner turmoil that she was going through in her life, to when she found food as a comfort going through this situation. So I don't know what you're finding as your comfort as you're dealing with your body image and your self-esteem. It could be a person, it could be food, it could be going to the gym a lot. This is how a lot of people develop body dysmorphia. They have this flaw and they're medicating it on their own, or this perceived flaw, and they're medicating that on their own by getting surgery, or by being at the gym all the time, or wearing a certain type of clothing style. This is how a lot of those things come into play in your life. And I want you to guys think about what happened to me that made me turn on myself in a way. What happened to me that made me hate myself? And this is the story that you hear from Nona. And so let's get to there's something she said in around 19 that reminded me of a story that I had been through. So let's skip and see what she said.
Experience was so deeply hurtful to me, because here's the thing, like, I knew I was large, like I knew that, but for him to put it so in my face in such a hurtful way, it's like something broke within me. And I think there are many women struggling with eating disorders, and men too, quiet as it's kept.
Sure.
Because there was something that was said to them that broke them.
Yeah.
And like, I think about it like, I think it's Proverbs 18:21 that says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. That word that's translated power is actually the Hebrew word yad, which means hand. And so if you think about it, what that's saying is that the tongue is a hand that shapes and creates. And the thing about a hand is a relatively neutral tool, right? Like, hands build houses, but hands also pull triggers. And if we're not careful, the hand of our tongue that should bring life and should encourage and should build up, it can destroy. And I think many people are suffering from eating disorders because the hand of someone's tongue destroyed them.
Oh my goodness. Yes, sister. This is a little overwhelming for me, because these are things that we talk about in coaching. 9 times out of 10, there is something somebody said about you that you can't get over. And that's why you have this body image issue or this self-esteem issue. And I have a lot of strategies that I teach about how to really like pull down those strongholds, because the Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians 10:5, I believe, to pull down those strongholds, like cast down those imaginations. And a lot of times we don't know how to do that, especially when your thoughts, we get about 60,000 thoughts a day. Probably 40,000 of them are going to be negative, things that somebody said about you, things that you're thinking about yourself, all these other imaginations. And we don't always know how to combat that. When it's 60,000 thoughts a day, we don't always know how to take those thoughts captive. And that is something that I plan to help you guys with on this channel, and my courses and my coaching, consistently pulling down strongholds. Because if you think about it, a lot of the times your body image issues stem back to those circumstances in your childhood when somebody said something about you, somebody verbalized something about you that stuck with you, that stuck in your soul. And that became your course of life moving forward. And so for her, she was saying how this guy, I think this guy that she liked, said something about her body weight, her weight, and it caused her to have more eating disorder. So at first, when she was, living with her mom and her boyfriend and that situation, she was overeating just to have comfort. And then it turned into an eating disorder because somebody said she was too big. And so she just consistently had the opinions of other people, the things that people have done to her to cause her to attack herself. And so that made me think about this situation. And I actually have this video still up on my channel. That time, this guy that I liked said that I would be a 10 if my butt was big. Oh my gosh. And this was before I had body image ministry. I had the modest movement, and I was like diving into those teachings to understand. I was learning more about myself in the process. And there was this guy that liked me at my job in Nashville. And he said, "You would be a 10 if your butt was big." I wanted to, oh my goodness. That was a very real circumstance to show me, okay, the words of people really have power. And I didn't let it affect me. I made a video about it. Like, I talked about it. Like, it's probably like 5 or 7 years old now. You guys can go find it. But it was crazy because I saw, like, I've walked this path. I'm helping women with these issues, but I've walked this myself. Men have told me stupid things about my body or who I am just because of the way I looked. And if I allowed that to change me, would I have as impact today to help anybody else? Would I still be trying to please them? A woman that does not know who she is in Christ, and a man tells her you'll be a 10 if you had a big butt, she will probably take that literally and starve herself or overeat, eat the cabbage, eat the cornbread, like the Black community says, go down to Miami, get her some surgery so she can be that 10. And like, it's just crazy because I remembered how I felt in that moment. I was taken aback, first of all, because I'm learning these things, and I'm like, no, the enemy didn't just, no, he didn't just pull one on me. I'm called to help women with this. And it was really surreal moment. And so to the women who feel like she does, like this man said this about me, oh, now it breaks you because it's like one thing on top of another. If you haven't learned how to pull down and cast down those imaginations, if you haven't learned who you are in Christ, it's just one thing on top of another until your soul finally breaks down and you just continue to become worse, basically. So let's see. She talked about, let's go to 35. Actually, since my time is getting a little bit further away from me, let's talk about if plastic surgery actually is a sin or not. So plastic and cosmetic surgery can be useful for certain situations. Like, it's not all bad. There is plastic surgery that is needed to help people reconstruct their bodies. Let's say that they had an accident and they're going through face reconstruction or a body reconstruction. And those things, these things are here to be helpful to humanity. Managing disabilities can be another reason why someone undergoes plastic and cosmetic surgery. You could be born with a defect and you want to get that fixed. So I'm not saying that this is like something that's, oh, terrible, this is the devil. This can be helpful. It's just human beings take things the wrong way oftentimes. And so I think a person should know their motives. A lot of times, motivation, God is looking all the time. God is looking at our heart. And so it's not that something is inherently bad, it's what our heart position is concerning it. Now, always go to the word of God to know if we do need to stay away from something, because this is not to say that we can just smoke a cigarette in moderation or something. That's not saying that. This is saying that God is always looking at the heart motivation and intentions when it comes to what we want to do. And so I took a few notes so it could help me out. So yeah, I think you should check your motivation to make sure that if you're actually going in a sinful pattern or if it's really a need that you have. So 1 Corinthians 10:23 says, everything is permissible, but not everything is helpful. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. So does plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery actually build up a person? No pun intended. It does build up a person, but is it building them up positively? Is it building them up in a way that they can glorify God? Is a question for believers to ask themselves. Is this glorifying God? Because we are told that everything we do should be to the glory of God. Now, when you think about when it comes to appearance, a lot of times it's not for the glory of God. A lot of times it is to glorify ourselves. A lot of times it's because we want to look a certain way so we get a certain reaction from people. When is our appearance ever about, I want God to react to what I'm looking like right now? It's mostly about, this is how I want people to perceive me. This is how I want to be seen in the world. This is how I want to be valued. You know what I'm saying? So is your cosmetic surgery going to glorify God? Is you planning to go to Miami this summer? When I'm talking to somebody, going to glorify God, or is it glorifying you and your selfies? Because you're probably going to turn around for the rest of your social media life. And I know a girl who did that. I know women in my circle who have, not in my close circle, but I've known women who went to get surgeries. I made a video about one of them. She almost died on the table getting her fat rearranged. And I have since then, she's turned around to face. But let me tell you, after she got that surgery, all I saw was her backside on every picture, probably for 2 or 3 years straight. Side profile, back profile, the face barely in the camera. You know, is that going to glorify God, or is it to glorify yourself? Is it to increase your following and to increase your likes? That is a heart motivation. That goes into sinfulness because it's selfish, it's prideful, it's people pleasing, it's what do they call pick me? I don't even know what that really means. That's what that kind of is like, you know? And so if we're honest, people getting any type of surgery are kind of only trying to do things for themselves. And so check your motives for getting surgery. Some people's motives are out of jealousy. Some of it is out of envy because you see other people and you see what they're looking like. You see the attention that they're getting, and now you want to get the same thing. Some of their motivations are covetousness, people pleasing. There are many things that just need to be addressed when you decide to do anything in your life, especially when it comes to cosmetic surgery, because you could be doing something out of a really sinful heart that's unchecked. And I honestly believe the beauty industry for believers is a area in our heart that's very unchecked, because yeah, we think, there's nothing wrong with makeup, there's nothing wrong with this outfit or that outfit, but I think it's been so covered up by our own selfishness that we're not understanding how our heart issues are tied into our beauty, are tied into how we perceive other people and ourselves. And so if you feel like you want to go get that cosmetic surgery, do a heart check first, because if it ain't to glorify God, then you don't need to be doing it. So some people might say, okay, what about correcting my teeth? Like, that's a cosmetic surgery. Is that a sin? Perfecting your smile is something that can be genetically defective or could hurt your general health. Like me, I had periodontal infections because my crowding on my teeth when I got them corrected finally, like a pre-pandemic me. I had crowding. And so it was actually a problem. I had to get all of this treatment. I spent about maybe $3,500 on treatment. And the dentist told me if you correct your crowding, you would see less infection. And so I corrected my crowding. It really wasn't cosmetic surgery, but it was a cosmetic procedure. And so when it comes to stuff like that, like I mentioned before, cosmetics can be something that is genetically defective in you. It can be beneficial for your health. And so I'm not talking about those things where you actually have a health issue that you can get corrected, but we're talking about vanity, plastic and cosmetic surgery, if that's being a sin or not. And so let me see. So, God created us, and He knows how He made us, and so He knew my teeth was gonna be crooked, and He probably knew I wanted to fix them too. So, me and my sister both get that teeth crowding, and so it's not wrong for you to correct things that are genetically wrong with you. But I want you to understand the difference in genetic defect and a perceived defect. Now, this is for people who are borderline body dysmorphia. When people correct their teeth, there is clearly an issue with the way your teeth came in. When people want bigger butts and boobs and nose jobs, they have a perceived flaw based on how somebody else looks. They may have an insecurity or a lust for attention. And that is when your motives are in question. So, like I said, your teeth, obviously, everybody can see there's a defect with that. The way they came in was wrong. But when you're looking at like you have healthy boobs, you have a healthy waist, you have a healthy bottom, but because of culture and society and how they say things need to be looked, and you seeing other people fit that mold, now you think you have an issue. that is where the problem lies, is that now you have an imaginary flaw about yourself because of coveting what somebody else has. And this is how we know that can be a problem with you getting plastic surgery. I can't tell you what to do with your money, but I will say don't do it if it's not going to glorify God. If you are doing this out of covetousness, out of envy, out of the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, it's a sin for you, definitely. Now, somebody could say, well, what if I just want a big butt anyway? I don't have a perceived flaw. I like my butt now, but I want it bigger. There is always a way somebody going to try to squeeze their way in. Is it glorifying God? Why you need a bigger butt? Do you want all those eyes to be on your butt? Because listen, causing people to stumble. Jesus said, woe to those who cause people to stumble. Now, you want a bigger butt, that's going to get you all types of attention from these men, and you call yourself a believer. You should, if you know how serious God takes sin and how serious it is for you to cause somebody to stumble on purpose, you want to go shave that off. You want to go shave it off. Now, you may need to do a study on that, or I may need to talk about that a little more at some point. But Jesus said, woe to those from which stumbling blocks come. So don't try to weave your way in and say, oh, what if I don't have these issues about nobody else? I'm not coveting, but I just want it bigger. That's a stumbling block for somebody. How can you cover that up? If it's getting bigger, how are you going to cover it? Is it going to be impossible to find outfits for you? Like, think about this stuff. Why you want something to be, the human flesh, we just want things. We want more and more. We want bigger and bigger, all of that. So we just need to keep that in check. Okay, guys. So God tells us in Romans 12:2, be not conformed to this world and its superficial values and customs. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The music and media today glorifies this image of smaller ways, bigger butt, and people with those shapes are really eager to flaunt it and to put it out there. And so we see these Instagram model profiles. We see our celebrities. We see, all of the glorification, the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. And we end up wanting to fashion ourselves just like them. But the Bible tells us that don't be conformed to them and their superficial customs. It's a superficial value of placing worthiness and focus on the flesh, because the flesh is passing away. Our focus really needs to be very different this year. It is not on the flesh. It's not on the world system. It should be on eternity. So it does not matter. The world makes a big deal about how you look in the world and how much money you make and what you own. But we as believers don't care about that. We have died with Christ Jesus and we live to him. I was just reading that scripture today, is that I'm not living for myself anymore. Christ lives in my body. Why do I care how my body is going to look to other people? If you find yourself caring about how your body's looking to other people, I'm not trying to minimize your pain and your struggle, but you're conforming to the world and their superficial values. They care about that. We don't care about that as believers. And so like I was saying, it's a lot of stuff that goes on online. Just this statistic alone says that 98% of teen girls feel pressure to look a certain way. So we know that this number of 98% of women feeling pressured and 85% of women comparing themselves to images online, this is an issue and it needs to be addressed. And that's why I've been sitting on this teaching for so long, because women need to know, need to look inside of their heart and determine if is what I'm doing going to bring God glory or just myself. And this is also an area that you really need to hone in and focus in on, because this can get in the way of your relationship and your growth and your maturity in God, because it's flesh versus the spirit. This is a battle. Our flesh is always fighting against the spirit. The spirit is fighting against the flesh. They don't want the same things. The spirit wants to glorify God. Your flesh wants to glorify yourself. And if you are having this issue with your flesh, you have to get that under control. For real. So, like I said, I'm leaving you with Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world. Actually, my favorite passage, Romans 12:1-3. Give your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice to God. This is your reasonable service to him for everything that he's done for you. And be not conformed to this world and its superficial values and customs, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You got to change your mind about this. And that's what Nona had to do. She had to change her mind about herself because of everything she'd been through in her past. Then you can know what the perfect will of God is for your life. Now, if you want to know what that perfect will of God is for your life, go to christianbodyimage.com, go through our 4 steps of what it means to be made in God's image. And I will see you guys next time. Yay. You know, I did my first video of 2025. I'm super excited. Leave in the comments, how you resonate with this, how this may have helped you. And I look forward to connecting with you guys soon. All right. See you next time.